Bob Murphey likes short introductions. He's often said that the less you use the handle, the longer the hoe will last. So, from Nacogdoches, Texas, here's Bob Murphey with Raunchous Red and other country humor.
It's a great crowd. I've been sitting in the corner over there waiting my turn, and I didn't know there was this many folks out there. I think everybody couldn't come simp somebody. Y'all come on the bus, they tell me. Good way to travel. It beats these trailers that these folks pull. Y'all know the trailer families, don't you? You better watch out for them. You can recognize them right off. They come through Nacogdoches headed down to Padre Island, the poor man's Florida, down there. And you can recognize them. They drive in a $25,000 car. They pull in a $75,000 trailer. And they're looking for a free place to park. I was a little intrigued listening to Carl tell about that motel he stayed, or was that Cotton? It's confusing. This has been a great show and a long one. And somebody was talking about a motel or hotel. They got me staying in a great big fine hotel across the street over here. And it's a nice hotel, except I get lost in it. The first day I was here, yesterday, they showed me up to my room, and I never paid too much attention. And I come down to the lobby, and I had took a chew of tobacco. And some folks stopped that was nice enough to talk to me. And you know, when you're talking and you're chewing and you're someplace where you can't spit. Anyway, I sauntered off and started trying to get out of the thing, to get out on the street and spit in the gutter. And I couldn't find where you got outside. Now, a fella come by with a brass badge on. He was some official of the hotel, and so I wandered over to him. I said, "How did you get outside here?" He said, "Dial 9. But I'm delighted to be here. I bring you greetings from Nacogdoches, Texas. And that's about all you can bring from Nacogdoches. I'll tell you one thing. I ain't going to waltz across Texas with a car. We'd be shot before we went 30 feet. Carl reminds me of a rich boy there in Nacogdoches. Well, he ain't a boy anymore, but when he was a boy, his folks thought he had a fine voice. Every town's got one of them people that thinks they got a fine voice. And I know I can't sing. But you know, there's worlds of people in America today singing that don't know they can't sing. Anyway, this family give him voice lessons. There ain't no telling how much they spent giving that boy. And he growed up and he decided he'd give a concert. And he hired the high school auditorium, and they put it in the paper. And there was a good many folks there, I understand. And the next day he come downtown and he run into a friend and he said, "Were you at my concert last night?" The fellow said, "Oh yes." Says, "I sure were there." He said, "Didn't you think my voice just filled the auditorium?" The fellow said, "It sure did, sure did." Says, "I saw a lot of folks leaving to make room for it." I'm from the country. Always have to tell people that, nobody'd believe it. You know, they say there ain't no fool like an old fool. Have you heard that? And ain't no fool like an old... Some young fool said that. I live on the theory that you can't turn back the clock, but you can sure rewind it. And I have attempted to do that. I ain't going to tell you all how old I am. A fella met me on the street the other day, hadn't seen him in a year or two, and he walked up and shook my hand. He said, "Bob Murphy." Said, "I thought you was dead." I said, "No, but I got all the symptoms." You know, they kind of make sport of us mature citizens. A fella drove by a friend of mine's house. He was plowing his garden. He lives about 3 miles from me. And he was plowing the garden this past spring. And some fella in a great big Cadillac car drove up alongside the fence and hollered over there and said, "Hey, old timer!" So a man stopped. He looked over there, and this fellow says, "Where's the road to Houston?" So man said, "How'd you know my name was Old Timer?" This fellow said, "I just guessed it." Well, he said, "Guess where the road to Houston is?" He said, they don't think we know nothing. They think we're still riding around in buggies. They don't think we keep up with nothing. And I guess we're not up to the help of the new age. I was talking to a fellow there on Main Street in Nacogdoches here a while back, and our sheriff walked by, old John Lightfoot, been sheriff for 40 years. Ain't never done nothing, but he done it so good nobody ever noticed. But anyway, this fella hollered at me. He said, "Hey, Sheriff," said, "come over here." And the sheriff come over where we were standing. He said, "Sheriff, I want to ask you a question." He said, "Every time I listen to the news, they talking about marijuana." He said, I read the newspaper, and the grand jury done indicted a bunch of people for marijuana." He said, "What is marijuana?" Sheriff said, "John," he said, "it's really kind of looks like a weed." Said, "If you ever see it, you'll know it." Said it grows up about as high as corn sometime, and it's got a long, narrow leaf, jagged around the edges of the leaf. And he said these people dry them leaves just like curing tobacco. And said they crumple it up and roll it up in bull durham paper, cigarette paper. And he said they call it pot. He said they smoke that pot, and said it sends them on a trip. They take a trip. This old man said, "That's the dangest thing I ever heard." He said, "We always had a pot." But he said, "We kept it under the bed, and it kept us from making a trip." So, we may not know the language, but we still pretty well advised. I'm from Texas, and I'm proud to admit it. Is there anybody here from Texas? Well, who's going to help me fight my way out of here when Well, I was going to warn them about it, but I have found this out. When I go around speaking around over the country, little old places, and they always say, "Mr. Murphy is from Texas," and everybody just kind of scoots down in their chair. People around this country think Texans are a bunch of braggarts and loudmouths and liars. Of course, that's not true. A Texan will tell you the truth 4 or 5 different ways before he'll lie to you. It's been a great show. I have enjoyed it. A lot of performers don't show up until about 10 minutes for them to go on, and they are kind of prima donnas about their going around the country. I'm not. I sat over in the corner there, and I've watched it all. I've seen everything y'all have seen. It's been a great show. I'm honored to be on it. I like shows like this. They're a lot of fun. They got music, and they got jokes, and it's been a kind of a variety show. You remember the old tent shows used to come through town? Medicine shows and tent shows. And that was good entertainment for the country folks. And they'd put up a tent and drive through town and holler out that they're going to have a show that night. And they'd fill the tent up, you know. We didn't have nothing else to do. And they'd have a variety show. I remember one time, one come to Nacogdoches, and they had a ventriloquist. One of these fellas, you know, and he had his dummy there, and he would sit there with his dummy, and he wasn't getting too much response. He was a city fella, and he didn't know what country folks liked to laugh about, and he kind of got mad, and he come in kind of cutting some pretty sharp jokes about country people, about the Hicks and small towns, and it rubbed them people the wrong way. And we had an old boy, the butcher. He was a heck of a big old boy, and about halfway through, he stood up and he hollered up there at that ventriloquist. He said, "Just a minute, fella," says, "I represent what you've been saying there about us country people." Said, "We the best," said, "we the backbone of this country," and said, "we give you your food and your clothing," and said, "I don't appreciate it one bit." And this ventriloquist, of course, saw he had made a mistake. Looking at that fella, and he said, "Well, now, fella," he says, "excuse me," he said, "we've got to learn to laugh at ourselves." And he says, "I meant no insults to you." He said, "I apologize if I've hurt you." But said, "I ain't talking to you." Said, "I'm talking to that smart aleck on your leg, guys." We had a tent show there one time. Had a mind reader. Of course, ain't nothing. We all married one of them, but anyway, old Cotton got up here. I was going to kind of eat him out, talking about his pretty wife. And she's a nice lady, and he kept cracking them jokes. Have y'all noticed I don't tell jokes on women? I used to. But I got to looking around. The women is coming to the forefront in this country. You look around in politics, government, education, entertainment. They're taking their proper place, and I'm delighted to see it. And I don't tell stories on them. But you'd be amazed. I go around just like last night. Somebody always gets up and tells a joke on the women. I just sit there and cringe. I said, he's going to do it. He's going to do it. Heard one just the other night. Fella come driving up to his little suburban home, and his little 5-year-old son run out to meet him. Now, friends, y'all might make a lot of money. You might own a lot of property. You might be very successful in your business, but no man is ever as rich as when he comes home after an honest, hard day's work, and his little children run out to meet him with open arms. That's as rich as any man will ever get. And this little boy run up to his daddy, and his daddy reached down and picked him up. And he noticed big old tears running down the child's face. And he said, "What's the matter with Daddy's little man this afternoon?" Little boy said, "Mama run over my tricycle with the car." Daddy said, "Son, I have told you 1,000 times, don't leave your tricycle on the porch." Now, I don't tell them kind of stories. And Susie Humphreys, isn't she a wonderful speaker? Said at one time in her life she was approaching divorce. I had a friend come to town there in Nacogdoches here a while back, head all down, looked worried. And of course, everybody said, "What's the matter with you, Jim?" He said, "Boys, I got trouble out the house." Oh, they said, "Don't worry about it." Said, "Everybody's got trouble at the house. They've been married as long as 2 weeks." Said, "Don't worry about it." Said, "Little worry." No, he says, "Boys," says, "hate to say this, but," said, "it looks like divorce." Well, he said, "What's the trouble? It can't be straightened out." He said, "My wife hadn't spoke to me in over 3 days." And one of his friends spoke up and he said, "Well, now," says, "I'd think a long time about that." Said, "Women like that's hard to find." I don't appreciate them kind of jokes. Now,
You've reached the end of this side. To continue listening, turn the tape over now.
ladies, I'll tell you what's wrong with you men folks. Men do not understand women. They never have, and they never will. I heard a man say one time, if you know how, said you can play a woman just like a violin. Said you bring her nice things, bring her flowers every once in a while, compliment her when she comes back from the beauty shop on how beautiful she looks. Said you know how to do it. Said you can play a woman just like a violin. What that fool don't know is a woman can play a man like the whole orchestra. They've had our numbers since the beginning of time, and we ain't got sense enough to realize that. We go through life thinking we in the lead. Fellow was watching football game on the TV last fall, and it's coming up again, ladies. His wife had been in there, and she finally got tired of it. She went back to the back of the house and put the curlers in her hair and give herself a, whatever you all give yourself, a hair thing. He walked back in there, he's still watching the game, never did even miss it. And it's getting late, it's one of them football games, it's over about midnight, you know, and so she bent over and said, "I'm going to bed." And she bent over and he looked up and he jumped back, he said, "What on earth has happened to you?" He says, "I have set my hair." He said, "Well, what time did it go off?" we don't understand these little things that y'all do. You know, I said that I don't play or sing. My family's musical. I have a first cousin. And I admire that young man that toots that horn. He's been on the program here. Great trumpet player. And I got a first cousin that he plays like Louis Armstrong. He uses both hands and sweats a lot. But the one that's really been the musical success is my second cousin. And he has made a mint of money playing the fiddle. He plays the fiddle. He goes to divorce court, and he plays the wedding march backward at divorces. Susie having that baby. I'm telling you, you know, we all got problems in life, as Susie pointed out. Ain't a person in this room that hadn't come through some problems in their life. And I have always said, first, you got to recognize what the problem is. Then you got to solve it. Way back yonder when doctors still made house calls, neighbor of mine south of me there on Farm Road 343. This is back in the 20s, I guess. But anyway, his wife was fixing the domino, and about 1 o'clock one morning he called the doctor. He said, "Doc, you got to get out here." He said, "My wife is fixing to have a baby." Well, the doctor jumped in his car and he told him before he left the house, he said, "Just keep her calm," said, "I'm on the way." Well, he drove up to this little shack. So, well, it was a pretty good house back in them days, but didn't have any running water, no inside plumbing, no electricity. An old man met him on the front porch. He said, "This away, Doc." And they went back into the back bedroom, and his wife was there, and she was fixing to have a baby. And there was an old lamp sitting there in a little bedside table. The doctor got everything, opened his bag, and he sent the old man and said, "Go and boil some water." Now, the reason they tell people that is to get them out of the way. And so the husband went to boil some water. He's toting his lantern. He went back in the kitchen, and he got the water and brought it back with the lantern. And about the time he got in the room, he heard a little baby crying. And the doctor looked over at him and said, "Well, you've got a baby girl." The old man stuck out his chest and said, "A little girl, huh?" I said, "Yes, fine looking, perfectly formed." The old man said, "Well, that's sure nice." And doctor said, "Wait a minute." He said, "Bring that lantern over here." Directly they heard the crying of another little child. The doctor said, "Well, your little daughter's got a brother." The old man said, "Sure enough." He said, "Yep." He said, "You've got twins." And the old man started walking away, and the doctor said, "Wait a minute." He said, "Bring that lantern back over here." Old man come back. No, he said, "I ain't going to do it." He said, "I think that light's what's attracting them." Friends, let me lay just a few words of advice with you. My time's about up. They said they want to get you all out of here. If I had any advice to give you, the first thing I'd say to you, never lose your enthusiasm. Oh, that you would be an enthusiastic husband, an enthusiastic wife, an enthusiastic citizen, an enthusiastic member of your church. And I think that's very important. I've loved this gospel music that we heard today. I sometimes am around people that probably don't believe like we do, and I tell them sometimes, they say, "What do you think?" Well, I said, "I'm no preacher, but I said, I know this. I know what y'all think." I said, "Y'all think that nobody plus nothing equal everything." So I know who made this old world, and I try to live as I should. Be an enthusiastic churchman. Be an enthusiastic parent or grandparent. Oh, enthusiasm. You say, "Well, I'm enthusiastic." Well, I'm sure we try to be. Let me just tell you a story. True enthusiasm. Back at the turn of the century, there were 3 old cowboys bending their elbow, drinking a little red-eyed. They were shut-eyed drinkers. You seen these? I asked someone one time, I said, "Why do you shut your eyes when you take a drink of whiskey?" He said, "Murphy, I learned a long time ago, son." He said, "Whenever I look at it," he says, "my mouth waters and I don't want to dilute it none." He said, But anyway, these old cowboys were sitting around bending the elbow at the Buckhorn Saloon there in San Antonio, Texas. They heard the train whistle. The train station, the depot, was just about 2 blocks from the saloon. And when they heard that train whistle, they grabbed up an old beat-up satchel, as we used to call them, had barbed wire wound around it. And they made a race for the depot. Well, as they got down there, the train was pulling out of the station. They ran up, the train master was standing on the platform, and they said, "Is that the train, the Amarillo?" She said, "There she goes, boys." Well, they made a dash for it. Them old crooked heel cowboy boots, the hats all blowed off. Somebody dropped the satchel, all the drawers fell out on the right-of-way of the track, and they run it down. 2 of them caught the last coach and swung up on them old iron steps that they used to have on the train. One little fella, short-legged, about like me, he didn't make it, and the train pulled on out. Well, this little old cowboy started walking back up to the train station, stopped and picked up all the hats, wired the satchel back together, and walked on back up. Well, the train master had been standing on the platform watching the race. I mean, it was a pretty good sight to see. And as he walked up, his head was all down, and he was very dejected. And the train master said, "Well, son," said, "it wasn't a total loss. So your 2 friends made it." The little cowboy said, "Well, that's just the heck of it, because them boys just come down here to see me off." Enthusiasm. They gave it their all to get him on that train. The second thing, keep smiling. Keep smiling. Listen, you're never totally dressed until you wear a smile. And the last thing, and I've been delighted to be with you, the last thing is most important. Our kids are using it a lot now. You may hear them hanging there. Hanging there. I had a neighbor woman went out get some frying eggs here a while back, walked through the barnyard toward the barn, happened to look down there, lay an orphan egg out there in the open. She rushed down, picked that orphan egg up, put it in her apron pocket, went on in the barn to get the eggs. Decided she'd slip that orphan egg under one of her hens and let them hatch it. See what she had there. Well, she tried to slip that egg up under every setting hen she had. None of them would take it. She'd slip it under there, they'd kick it out. She remembered a neighbor woman across the road had an old blind hen. She got in the pickup and took that orphan egg over there to that old blind hen across the road. They went out there and slipped that egg under a setting hen. This old blind hen set it and hatched it. And out hatched a little yaller rooster, cutest little thing you ever did see. And that little yaller rooster growed and prospered and done well and growed up to be the meanest, hatefulest, fightingest red rooster you ever saw. That rooster whooped everything on that farm. It whooped the dogs, it whooped the cats, possums, coons, armadillos, anything that come on that farm, that red rooster would take to and whoop. They called him Raunchous Red. And he was raunchous. He's a fighting rooster. One day the bull come up with a milk cow. That rooster put that bull back in the pasture. I mean, attacked that bull. This was a fighting rooster. One day Raunchous Red was parading around out in the bright sunlight out in front of the barn. The hawk began to circle up in the sky above it. Those of you raised on a farm know what a hawk will do to a chicken. That hawk made a dive as only a hawk can do. Red wasn't expecting no air attack. That hawk hit Red right in the middle of the back and knocked him unconscious. The hawk come down and picked Red up with them big talon feet and flew out of that barnyard across a little creek of water over to an open field and lit to eat him. Now, I don't know whether it was the altitude of the flight or the fresh air or what it was, but Red come to in flight. When that hawk lit in that open field, is the dangest bird fight come off that county had ever saw. A fella that stood on his back porch and watched it said that Raunchus Red and that hawk fought for over 35 minutes in that open field. And he said when they finally got through, he said there wasn't a bush, a blade of grass, a stick, a rock, in a radius of over 35 feet that wasn't covered with blood, feathers, and corruption. And he said that Raunchus Red whooped that hawk worse than any living thing has ever been whooped. He said Red not only whooped that hog, but he made him fly him back over to the barnyard. Now, friends, that's what I call hanging in there. Yesterday, my friends, is a canceled check. Tomorrow is a promissory note. Only today is cash to spend. And I wish you well. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
To have Bob Murphy liven up your next meeting, write Bob Murphy, Post Office Box 630854, Nacogdoches, Texas 75963. And thank you for listening. Bob Murphy likes short introductions. He's often said that the less you use the handle, the longer the hole will last. So from Nacogdoches, Texas, here's Bob Murphy with, I don't like to spread gossip, but I don't know what else to do with it.
Folks, I'm from the country. I always have to tell people that. Nobody'd believe it. Being from the country, over there when we put on a show, we always ask the question, can everybody hear? I don't ask that too much. I was making a major policy address one time to the Texas Sheep and Goat Raisers Association. They was meeting in a great big fine hotel in Fort Worth, Texas. Well, they had been having trouble with the snorting pole. And when I got up, I wanted everybody to hear. They had done sent a fellow out of the basement of the hotel, had on a pair of coveralls, had the name of the hotel embroidered across his back. He had come up there and tapped on the microphone. And then he had worked the switch. Then he blowed in it. Now all of you know that after you have tapped and switched and blowed, that's all anybody knows to do to one of these things. So I got up and I said, now can everybody hear? And there's no cowboy sitting about as far back as them folks in center field out yonder. He hollered up there that night, and I have never forgot what he said. He said, I can't hear, but go ahead, there ain't no need in everybody's suffering. So if you can hear, you're in suffering distance. Now, they put me on at this particular spot for the simple reason that if anybody wants to eat lunch early, go ahead, you won't miss nothing. I ain't gonna sing. I ruined my voice before I was 20 years old, cooling chili. But there's one thing about me. I know I can't sing. There's lots of people singing in America today that don't know they can't sing. We used to have a soloist in our church. Over where I live in East Texas, everybody's a Baptist. Unless somebody's been messing with them. Anyway, we had a soloist in our church. Every church has got a soloist. They don't usually want to sing too much, about once every service. But this soloist had sung in our church for over 40 years. And her husband retired, and they're going to move down to Galveston on the coast to a little home they'd bought down there. So the evening, Sunday evening service, the last day she's going to sing, they's leaving the next day. She sang her last solo. Well, after church, we all planned a little reception. We went back in the parlor of the church, and the ladies had picked some homemade cookies. We had a little punch, had coffee for the strong drinkers. Well, we stood around there, and the preacher gave her a little charm bracelet. Had a little piano on it and a little musical note, and the years that she had sung, you know, in the church. It was a nice affair. Well, the cookies give out pretty early, and people started drifting out. And finally, the lady that had played the piano for all them years, her accompanist, called her over into the corner of the parlor and said, "Miss Johnson," she said, "I have played the piano for you here in the church for over 40 years." And said, "Somebody ought to tell you." She said, "I've been led to tell you." She said, "I have played on the white keys." She said, "I have played on the black keys." And says, "You have always sung in the cracks." Now, I said I was from the country. I live about 7.5 miles out of Nacogdoches, Texas, on a little ranch. I raise a few old cows. I'm getting prouder of them every year. These prices hold like they're holding. Nacogdoches is not a big town. We had a prize fight there one time. Town was so small that both boxers had to sit in the same corner of the ring. And I ain't going to be too funny for you this morning. I apologize for it. Had a tragedy in Nacogdoches the day I left home. The pool hall burned down. 15 left homeless. But I come on up here anyway, flew up on the airplane. Some of my friends in Nacogdoches said, "I wish I'd go around and tell them old jokes." Said, "I just love to fly." I do not love to fly. I do it to make a buck. Old man Jimerson there at Nacogdoches met me in the post office here a while back. Big old tall man. I've known him all my life. He's about 6'4". If he'd have growed another inch, he'd have forked again. You've seen them kind of people. Old man Jimerson walked up to me and looked down at me. He said, "Bob," he says, "have you ever spoke in Cincinnati, Ohio, I said, one time I went up to Cincinnati and spoke to the Cincinnati Board of Realtors Association at their installation of officers banquet one time. Well, he said, if you ever go back to Cincinnati, he said, I'd like to go with you. Well, now, my knowledge, this old man ain't never been out of the county. And I asked him, I said, Mr. Jimerson, why do you want to go to Cincinnati? He said, I was born up there. He said, my folks come off to Texas when I was 2 years old. Said, I've never been back. Said, I'd just like to go back before I die. Well, I said, Mr. Jimerson, if I ever go back to Cincinnati, you can sure go with me. It wasn't 2 weeks till I got a phone call from the Bar Association of Ohio, and they wanted me to come and speak at their state convention, and it was going to be in Cincinnati. Well, I run into Mr. Jimerson about a few days after that, and I said, Mr. Jimerson, you still want to go to Cincinnati? He said, I sure do. Well, I said, I'm going. He said, I'm going with you. I said, that'll be fine. He said, you want to go in your car or mine? No, I said, Mr. Jimerson, we ain't got time to be driving backwards and forwards to Cincinnati. I said, we gonna fly. Well, then he said, I ain't going. I said, you don't fly? He said, no, I don't fly. He said, I don't fly and I don't swim. I said, why is that, Mr. Jimerson? He said, Bob, he said, I ain't going to do nothing that when you're doing it and you stop, you die. I never get on an airplane now. I don't think about Mr. Jimerson. Somebody asked me a while back, said, you fly a lot, don't you? I said, about 50 times a year I have to fly. They said, well, as an experienced flyer, they said, where do you like to sit on the airplane? Well, I said, I always like to sit near a piece of twisted metal, because that's the only thing they ever find when one of them things falls. I'd really like to sit on that black box they always find. But I made it up here, and I want to thank old Mike and all the people that's playing this thing. This has been a fun time for me. I was here last night and heard it all. Of course, the best is yet to come. Old Carl's going to get up here and make a recording. He wrote me a letter and told me he'd like for me to be here. Says I'm gonna make a tape. And I told him I'd be here as long as he didn't tape it on me. But I'm so delighted to be here. Y'all come up on the bus. I talked about that flying. I'd heap rather ride the bus if I had time. We got an old man there in Nacogdoches. He's kind of a hermit, lives about 12 miles south of town, comes to town about, I'd say, once every 2 or 3 months. He don't want nobody messing in his business. He don't mess in nobody else's business, and he don't want nobody messing in his. Well, he's getting old. Never had been nowhere, and all at once he decided he'd go up to Dallas. Kind of sow a few wild oats up there or something. So he put on the best suit of clothes he had, and he come into town. He kind of looked all around. When he thought nobody was watching, he went in the bus station. He walked up to the man there in the bus station. He said, give me a bus ticket. Well, said, where are you going? He said, that ain't any of your business. I guess y'all knew y'all was coming to Lexington, and I bet you're glad you did. I'm going to tell you something else. Not only do I live in the country, but I'm putting on a few years. Ain't going to tell you how old I am. That ain't any of y'all's business. Fella walked up to me on the street there in Nacogdoches the other day, stuck his face right up in my face, said, "Mr. Bob." You know, when you get, you know you're getting old when they start putting that Mr. in front. He said, "Mr. Bob." Said, "How old you getting to be?" And I looked at that fella. I said, "My age is my business." He said, "You've been in business a long time, hadn't you?" I've outlived my hair. I tell people I'm clearing ground for a new face. I could use a new face. Now, I'm not going to tell you how old I am. I will tell you this. I notice now when I dream at night, all my dreams are reruns. But I don't laugh. I'm enjoying them. Some mornings I wake up just smiling, you know. Have y'all ever wondered why us old folks smile so much? Our teeth is the only thing we got, ain't got no wrinkles in it.
You've reached the end of this side. To continue listening, turn the tape over now.
Going around over the country making these talks, I see all these young people moving around and talking fast, and it just wears me out. I don't get too excited speaking. But some of these places I go, I feel like a scene at the homecoming. Do y'all have homecomings where y'all live? That's one of our biggest industries in East Texas. If it wasn't for homecoming, every town might near die on the vine. But we have homecoming. The schools have homecoming. The churches have homecoming. The graveyards have homecoming. And everybody goes to them homecomings. They find things. And let me tell you something. You ain't going to homecomings, you're missing a certain thing. If they ever asked you to serve on the homecoming committee, do it. Ain't nothing to it. They don't meet but one time. They have a big meeting, and they just meet to plan one thing. They try to find out what the hottest day of the summer is going to be. And that's the day they try to set for the homecoming. Well, we was having a homecoming out at Old North Church, the oldest Protestant church in Texas. Drawed a big crowd. Sun come up bright and hot. Everybody visited around in the morning. The ladies picked dinner on the grounds. They'd fixed every kind of delicious food you could eat. Everybody eat too much. After lunch, had a little gospel singing. They'd hired a gospel quartet to come over from Freeport, Louisiana over there, and they sang some beautiful old Christian songs. I love that. I don't make any excuses about my Christianity. I was talking to a fellow here the other day, and he wanted to argue about how the world began, and I listened to it. And finally I said, as I understand it, you folks believe that nobody plus nothing equals everything. Somehow that don't fit me. But anyway, they had some good gospel singing. And then the preacher got up and gave a little devotional, and it was very nice. And then they went out and worked the graveyard there. Got the fence back up and mowed. Took up a collection for future maintenance. By this time, the sun was setting in the west. It normally does. And the sun was going down. People started saying their goodbyes and going out to their cars. This young man started toward his sports model car out there, and as he's going to his car, he noticed an old gentleman leaning up against a big old oak tree there beside the graveyard, and tears was running down the old man's cheeks. And this young man stopped and he said, "Sir, are you having difficulty?" Old man said, No, son. He said, "Nobody can help me." He says, "I'm just looking out there in the graveyard. That all my friends is laying right out there." Well, the young man said, "I understand how you feel." He said, "How old are you?" Old man said, "I'm 94 years old." Young man said, "Well," says, "ain't much needing you going back to town, is there?" I get the feeling like that sometimes. We had an old man in Nacogdoches the other day celebrate his 95th birthday. And the newspaper sent a young man to, take his picture and write his story about it. And he sat down with him. He said, "Mr. Smith," said, "are you really 95 years old?" Mr. Smith said, "Yes, I am, son." Said, I'm 95 years old. This young man said, "Well," he said, "I hope I never live to be 95. Mr. Smith said, "Well, son, that's because you ain't 94 now." I don't understand why everybody wants to be young again. Have you noticed that? There ain't a soul in this audience that wouldn't give a few dollars to call back about 10, 12 years, or maybe more. My two beautiful daughters, I never will forget when they got 20 years old. You'd have thought they'd have been a bad death in the family. They's leaving their teenage years. They just couldn't hardly face it. 20 years old, wanted to be younger. We had two old brothers, Alton brothers, fine old men. They gone now. This happened many years ago. Neither one of them ever married, two old bachelors. They farmed about 200 acres of land about 20 miles from Nacogdoches. Good farmers, good people. Every Saturday they'd get in a one-horse wagon and go into Nacogdoches, a distance of 20 miles, to get their weekly supplies: cornmeal, flour, coffee, whiskey, chewing tobacco, the necessities of life. This particular morning, it was a hot August day. They got in that little old one-horse wagon, started in Nacogdoches. Well, it was hot. They was tired by the time they got to the Woden store. Now, the Woden store is an old country store, sits at the crossroads. I imagine wherever you live, you know some of these old country stores. Bunch of old men ain't got nothing to do, and they come and do it there at the store. But you can get some good conversation if you stop by there. Well, anyway, these old men, they come up to the country store. Stop to get them a red soda water and maybe a peanut patty or something for refreshments. They started in the store and they noticed a traveling salesman nailing up one of them old tin signs. You remember when they used to put all the advertising on them old heavy metal signs? They'd nail them up to trees and fences and telephone poles. They'd nail one on you if you stood still long enough. They'd putting up this sign. So they decided they'd stop and see what new product was coming to town. After he got it nailed up and kind of stepped back, it's a pretty big blue, navy blue sign, had white letters on it, and what it said was, try X-lax. And in smaller letters down there it said, and feel younger. Well, they went on in the store and drank their soda pop, and they come back out of the store, and one of the brothers turned to the other and says, let's try some of that X-lax. Went back in the store, bought 2 boxes, got on the wagon, started to Nacogdoches. About 2 miles below the store, one of them turned to the other and said, well, let's try a box of that X-lax. Well, they broke it open, shared it right down the middle, share and share alike. Commented on the good chocolate taste. Went on toward Nacogdoches. About another 4 miles, the driver turned to his brother and said, you feeling any younger yet? Brother said, no. Says, I ain't feeling a bit younger. His brother said, let's eat the other box. He said, well, they shared it right down the middle, share and share alike. Went on toward Nacogdoches. They come to 2 Mile Hill, just out of Nacogdoches. Old rough hill, the ruts was deep, a lot of rock in the road, and they's bouncing down that hill. Driver turned to his brother. He said, are you feeling any younger now? Brother says, no. But says, to tell you the truth, I think I've just done a mighty childish thing, he said. Now, my time is just about elapsed. I ain't said nothing. I tell people as I go around, I ain't the best speaker they could have got, but I'm probably the most honest speaker. Because I tell people, I ain't an expert on nothing. I don't know nothing about the deficit. I don't know nothing about the balance of payments. I don't know nothing about national defense. I don't know nothing about a health program for the country. I've been a little bit surprised that I ain't been elected to Congress. But you see, I don't try to hold out to be something that I ain't. Let me just kind of close up here now this morning by simply saying this. I've heard it said all my life. No man or woman will ever be poor if they can still laugh. I recommend it very highly. They say that the pessimist looks at the dark side of the clouds and mopes. The philosopher looks at the dark side of the clouds and shrugs. But the optimist, he don't see the clouds at all. He walking on them. So I hope you'll keep smiling and laughing. You know, this old road of life is a pretty rough road. Most of us have seen them ditches and bumps and rough places in the road of life, haven't we? You ever rode a flatbed wagon with no springs on it? That's the roughest ride ever known to man. As you go down the road of life, a good sense of humor is the springs under your wagon seat as you hit them bumps. It'll help. smiling. I was talking to a kindergarten teacher there in Nacogdoches here a while back, teaching these little bitty people before they ever graduate to the first grade. She said the other day in kindergarten they was having quiet time. Now, I did not know what quiet time was. We didn't have much when I was in school, but as I understand it, the little children put their arms down on the table and they shut their eyes. And they're supposed to be quiet for 10 minutes. I think that's to let the pictures on the wall quit swinging, let everything come. She said right in the middle of quiet time, that little old freckle-faced, big-eared boy sitting in the back of the room just cackled out. He said, he said, Timothy, what seems to be your worst trouble, honey? He said, teacher, I'm sorry. He said, I was just smiling big and it broke. I hope you'll go around smiling big and let it break. You know, thanks you. You know, a smile never goes up in cost, and it never goes down in value. Friend, it's been a delight to appear before you. You seem like fine folks. Sometimes I go to audiences and some of them drunk, and some of them hollering and all. And y'all got smiles on your face. You're friendly, you're courteous. This is the kind of folks that built this nation, and it's always a pleasure for me to appear before a group such as you. In conclusion, I'll say to you like I say to my wife when she starts to the beauty shop, good luck to you. Thank you very much.
To have Bob Murphy liven up your next meeting, write Bob Murphy, Post Office Box 630854, Nacogdoches, Texas 75963. And thank you for listening.